much. Hello, everyone. It is truly a pleasure to be here with you today. Um, the past 1 year, without a doubt, has been filled with unprecedented number of changes for the global business landscape as well as for the world in general. And for the global front, organizations across practically every industry has seen some sort of push towards or force towards accelerating their digital transformation and accepting or adopting digital technologies simply to ensure business continuity. And we're seeing a high demand increase for digital collaboration, virtual or remote work, as well as access to products and services via digital channels and virtual or video conferencing capabilities. Now, for multinational corporations and African companies, what we're seeing is a need to push forward with digital transformation executions. And for these companies to be successful in digital transformation, it would be very, very important to develop and execute digital strategies that truly align and are custom designed for the industry that they're in, as well as for the African market, which is very dynamic. So this is what I'd like to cover in my presentation today, to talk a little bit about some of the disruptions that have occurred in the general business environment over the past decade, some of the unprecedented changes that have occurred in the past 1 year due to the coronavirus pandemic, as well as how companies in Africa can accelerate their digital transformation. The past decade or so, we've seen disruption transform and change and completely affect our general business landscape. Our time-tested and the traditional rules and assumptions of our business are no longer valid. Our time-tested assumptions and rules around how to identify and engage with your customer base, how to develop and promote your products and services, as well as how to run your organization and optimize operations and manage the people in the organization have completely been disrupted. Now, emerging technologies have upended these traditional rules in our business landscape, and companies, digital-based companies that have been able to embrace and leverage new and emerging technologies are able to displace traditional business models that have existed for centuries in our business landscape. So let me give you a couple of examples here. If we just simply take the industry or market boundaries, traditionally companies were always confined by the physical location and the physical elements of where they're located or how they run their business. Now, new startups and companies that are coming up today, they have access to a global marketplace on day one of their business, simply because they are able to leverage social and digital platforms to engage with a global customer base. And because of these elements, they've been able to accelerate their growth and scale at a pace that's unprecedented. So if we take a traditional company or some traditional company examples like Starbucks or even Nike, these companies took about 24 years to reach a $1 billion valuation. Whereas if you think about companies like Prada, which is an internationally well-known brand as well, it took 98 years to reach a $1 billion market valuation. In contrast to that, companies such as YouTube, Twitter, and even Instagram, they took between 1 to 3 years to reach that same $1 billion valuation. So we're seeing this unprecedented level of scalability and growth simply because these companies were digital natives. If we take industry or sector boundaries, traditionally companies worked or operated within a specific industry boundary, whereas what we're seeing today is companies are displacing those traditional boundaries. If we go and ask Amazon, for example, what industry is Amazon in, they would find it really difficult to explain that because obviously they are in the space of retail, consumer retail, but they've also entered into financial services. They've entered into healthcare services. They also provide media and content streaming. So they've kind of displaced this entire traditional thinking about what industry boundaries are. And we're seeing many tech-based companies taking a similar approach. So when we look at some of these transitions or changes that have happened over the past decade, what the coronavirus pandemic has done over the past year is really accelerate and augment these changes even further. Now what we're seeing is there are some new forces that are really creating this next normal business environment of the post-COVID business landscape. And these include things like a shift in demand, new customer preferences and behavior patterns, as well as new consumption patterns. Even people are shifting away from purchasing the non-essential goods. They're shifting towards focusing on purchasing essential goods and utilizing more digital access points for these acquisitions. And of course, new working models. Never before in the history of modern times have we had a global community of people being forced out of physical access to their jobs and having to work on a remote or virtual environment. And so these changes have really had a massive impact because it's forced companies to rethink their traditional business models. It's forced companies to rethink the offerings that they provide to consumers, as well as even their corporate structures and how they're organized as businesses. And one of the biggest and most lasting changes, which I feel is the biggest impact perhaps for the business landscape, is this shift in mindset towards adoption and acceptance of digital. And so we're seeing in the African region, for example, companies or industries within the African region, such as financial services, retail, education, and even government, accelerating their digital transformation, embracing these changes and moving forward with digital adoption. So for example, elements like people have become more accustomed to digital transactions and digital payment capabilities, which in the past was slower to adopt. So if we think about digital transformation, it can be quite a daunting task to undertake for any organization. And as I mentioned earlier, for multinational corporations as well as companies in Africa, embracing digital transformation and developing and executing digital strategies that are really focused on the industry requirements as well as the dynamic African market are going to be so critical. And so what we have here is a digital transformation approach that really takes this massive transformation effort and breaks it down into specific building blocks. And by breaking it down, we make it a lot easier for companies to focus on specific areas as well as prioritize on initiatives that really can bring the returns that they're looking for within a shorter time frame. But it has to be said, though, at the end of the day, all four of these building blocks need to be addressed when you're looking at transformation within an organization, because essentially digital transformation really does involve end-to-end organization-wide change. So let's look at some of these specific building blocks in more detail. First, we have creating superior customer experiences enabled by technology. And what we're doing here is we focus or we help companies focus on looking at what their customer value proposition really is. This involves looking at who your customers are, what their behavior patterns and preferences are, what is a customer life cycle or customer journey that you're trying to enhance or impact, as well as really looking at developing solutions that allow you to create these frictionless, effortless, personalized experiences and leveraging technology to really create interfaces that allow you to scale without doubling or tripling your investments and efforts. And so what we're looking at really is utilizing technology to create experiences that last and can engage with your customers in the longer term. A great example of this, which I like to mention, is the Gucci app. And what it does is this app it combines the mobile technology with augmented reality capabilities and allows customers to really try the products that they have on themselves. So it simulates the experience of someone walking into a physical store and trying on the products. And it's incredibly impactful because when users utilize this, they can actually accelerate the buying process on the app itself. Another great example is Lego Ideas platform, which focuses on building community and engagement and allows for value delivery via this joint community platform. Lego Ideas allows their customer base to really engage with them on a product development level. So a customer can, or even a Lego enthusiast, can actually submit an idea for a new product. And if the community votes on it, this product would get selected for development and for commercialization. And so this creates a sense of joint ownership and builds a strong community behind the Lego brand. The second building block really focuses on digitization of products and services. So this has three aspects to it. Firstly, making your current product and service offerings available on digital channels. The second element is really transforming or creating new products and services that are suited specifically or designed specifically for the online or the digital economy. And the third element is coming up with completely new product offerings, expanding your portfolio of products and services for the digital economy. And what the focus here should be is really for companies to look at solving a real consumer problem. So what is the market problem? What is the value proposition of your brand to the market? How can your company or your product and service offerings resolve these needs that exist in the market? And having this really in-depth understanding for what's happening around the market space, as well as looking beyond your own industry and cross industries to see how you can actually leverage some of the ideas and the capabilities there. I like to share some great examples here. Stage King is one example that have pivoted their product offerings during the pandemic. So they are a company that exists in New South Wales, and essentially they're a company that builds physical wooden stages for festivals and outdoor events. During the pandemic, their revenue source went right down to zero, basically. And so what they did was they looked at the new requirements that are in the market. And for this space, basically there was a huge shift of people who started working in their home environment who needed home office furnishings. And they had the capabilities, the resources, and the raw materials to actually build this new product. And so they started building basically wooden home furnishing equipment, and they could sell that and create a new revenue source for themselves. So they basically pivoted their service offerings to include a new market. Another great example is Emmy Controls, and Emmy Controls is a company that exists here in Switzerland that basically builds and develops snow blowers. And what they were able to do really is, with a small tweak to their existing product, they could repurpose the snow blowers to disinfect large industrial spaces. And this was hugely in demand during the last 1 year. The third building block really focuses on the internal of your organization, how you as a company are running your organization, how you're optimizing your processes and your operations, as well as upskilling the people, how people are being managed and what capabilities are required for them to function within this new digital environment. The focus here really is on empowering people to do what they need to do no matter where they are, and to make sure that you get the same results by engaging people and ensuring that they get some benefits out of the relationship with the organization as well. So people element is really a big part of digital transformation. And I would go as far as even saying that it's such a critical element that without managing and engaging people in your organization well enough, digital transformation would completely fail in any company. So what we focus on here is also around enabling new ways of working. And so we saw a massive shift of people going into a home office environment over the past year, and companies having to very quickly embrace new digital platforms to engage with their employees and enable them to work within this new environment as well. So that may have involved education and training, digital skill sets. It could have been basic skill sets where people were trained on how to use digital platforms, but also involves some more advanced skill sets around programming and coding and so on. Another key element in this building block is really the operational excellence. As you start using more and more digital access points and digital channels and start pushing out more product bases that are suited for the digital environment, it is very important to ensure that your back end or your operational environment can deliver on those new products, services, and channels. So a lot of times what we've seen as in organizations is the focus is very much on the front end, the engagement points, the channels, the touch points, the commerce sites towards the market. But the back end is neglected in terms of making sure that, as your digital presence accelerates and scales and grows, you need to make sure that you can deliver on that in the back end as well. A great example of a company that's completely redefined their internal organization is Haier. They are a consumer electronics company in China. And about 10 years ago, they completely dismantled their 80,000 employees and recreated small, self-managing micro enterprises. And these were autonomous units, smaller units of up to about 20 people that worked like beehives and connected, collaborated, but were completely autonomous in the type of work and the deliveries that they had. They were able to triple their market capital over the past 10 years. But what is really exciting to note, though, is that during the pandemic, this company was actually extremely successful in coming back to business as usual. They were able to, by February last year, they were able to get themselves up and running in the new dynamic environment, despite the disruptions of COVID, and they were able to produce up to 99% of their orders by February last year. So this is a massive undertaking, but quite impressive as well. The final building block focuses on disruptive business models and revenue streams. And here really, we're looking at helping companies enable themselves, or helping companies utilize and leverage new emerging technologies to create new business models that redefine the market that they're in. So thinking outside of the box in terms of not what the traditional industry or organization is required to do, but how can we redefine the way you're doing things. And here really it does, technology plays a very critical role in this, but it's not the only element. Technology on its own cannot disrupt an entire industry. What is really required here is a strong value proposition towards the market. What does the market need? How can you as a company offer value for this market? And how can you leverage technology to do this quicker, faster, in a scalable way? And so what we do here is really ensure that we understand the shifts that have happened in the market, the behavior patterns, the needs, and the problems that have transformed, as well as the capabilities of emerging and new technologies and how we can meet those requirements. For the African market, there is an additional element called enablers, which is very critical. And this is to ensure that you have the right digital infrastructure and the right foundation structures to deliver on the business models that we're trying to develop. So ensuring that you have widespread development of digital infrastructures, ensuring that there's connectivity and access to the internet, making sure that there's sufficient access to affordable smartphones as well as affordable data plans, and of course, access to devices like laptops and computers. Today, we have about 29% of the region accessing able to access the internet and actively using the internet. And of those, a majority of them are accessing it via mobile devices or smartphones. So it would make sense to also look at, particularly when we're looking at advancing the region in terms of digital skills and capabilities, you want to make sure that there's more access to computers and laptops and such devices. And finally, education or digital skills. As I mentioned, there's these are essential capabilities in order to make sure that employees and people working in the region are able to go into the next level of digital performance. And this really involves not just basic digital skills around being able to use the technologies effectively, but also advanced digital skills around coding and programming to be able to develop solutions that suit the African market. A great example of a company that's been able to do this business model redefinition or innovation, I like to call it, is Naked Insurance. And many of you may actually recognize the name from your region. The essential thing is they were able to identify that traditional organizations in the insurance industry in the African market were not able to deliver some of the new customer demands. For example, the need for transparency and trust, control or flexibility over the amount paid per month, as well as the claims that you can make and the claims process. Personalization at scale. So can they extend a specific digital offering quickly across many markets with many language requirements in the African region? And of course, closeness and a more interactive relationship and engaging relationship with the brand. And so what they did was they realized that the traditional insurance business models were not able to deliver on this. And so they restructured from the beginning and created a solution that was completely new, a subscription business model where they were able to leverage AI technology and mobile devices to create a new online insurance that put the control back into the consumer or into the user's hands. So this was a very exciting use case, and we'll see many of these sort of use cases coming up over the next few years, particularly in the African region, I believe. And I think one thing to emphasize here is, as an organization, there are two aspects around business model innovation. You can actually go in the direction of starting a new company from scratch, and we call these edge business models that are built outside the constraints of your existing organization, or you can innovate within your organization where you might have to deal with some restrictions of the existing environment, but it still does have an impact on the market. So there are two approaches that any organization could take within business model innovation. So to summarize, I'd like to give you a quick run through of how companies could address accelerating digital strategies in the markets that you're in. The first step is really understanding where you're at. What's your digital maturity and readiness today? What kind of capabilities and infrastructures you have? What kind of skill sets are available to you? And how you can assess your existing environment in terms of how quickly you can transform this environment. The second piece is really looking at scanning disruptors and emerging trends. So what are some of the external disruptors that are coming your way, either in your industry, in other industries, or basically in the region itself? And really trying to identify, where's my next step? Where am I today, and where can I practically plan to go forward in the next couple of years? The next piece is really looking at customer value proposition. So who are your customers, what their behavior preferences are, what are the challenges that they're facing, and how you can impact their end-to-end customer journey with digital and physical touch points to create engagement with your customers, as well as addressing some of the breaks in customer journeys that have occurred over the last 1 year due to the coronavirus pandemic. The final piece is really, once you've defined some digital initiatives, try them out as pilots, but it would be very, very critical to take these pilot initiatives to the next level, prioritize, focus on developing them further and scaling up these digital initiatives so you can industrialize them for your business. I'd like to leave you with a final thought, a quote from Albert Einstein. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that we use to create them. Essentially, the traditional rules and assumptions around how businesses should run and how they engage in the market and what value they bring to a market are no longer valid in the digital economy. So we need to embrace some new techniques and new ways of thinking and new ways of organizing ourselves as companies in order to deliver for this digital economy in the sustainable way. We have tons of case examples and methodologies that we use to deliver successful digital transformation, as well as a free online tool that allows you to assess where you're at in terms of digital transformation today, in terms of your maturity and your readiness. So feel free to reach out to me via email or LinkedIn. I'm happy to share these resources with you. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I look forward